All right. So we respect and recognize the First Nations within whose unceded lands the village of Kaslo is situated, including the Kanaha, the Snipes and Silts people, and the Indigenous and Métis residents of our community. So we're called to order at 6 p.m. And we've got late items, and that is additional correspondence that has been received since our agenda deadline last Tuesday, and it's regarding South Beach. So if council would move that motion to add the late items. So Councillor Bird and Councillor Leafwood, any discussion? All those in favor? Carried, and a motion to adopt the agenda as amended. Moved by Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Lang. Any discussion? All those in favor? Is carried. And adoption of the minutes of the May 13th meeting. If there are no errors or omissions. Moved by Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Leafwood. Discussion. All those in favor? Carried. And we have a delegation this evening. Our new fire chief, Goose, is that how you say it?
Yes.
Goose?
Yes.
So you can come on up to the table, Mick, or you can just stand there if you wish, whatever feels comfortable for you. And welcome to council and to Kaslo.
Thank you. Yeah, just thrilled to be here, and I look forward to working with you all and serving the community.
Right.
Yeah, don't hesitate to reach out to anyone if they have any questions or it can be of help. More than happy.
All right. And you're coming to us from Roslyn?
From Roslyn, yes. I was the assistant fire chief and acting fire chief there I was acting as 7 years, and I've been there since 2008.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, we're happy to have you.
Yes, thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Okay. Did anyone have any questions for me or? No? Okay. All right.
All right.
Quick visit.
Hopefully I get to see you in these circumstances.
Yeah, that's right.
Volunteer at the highway, that's basically about the golf course down to the bridge. What can we do?
So this is, yeah, this is for council to interact with our. You're not a nobody, but this is for council business, but Mick has indicated that you could reach out to him any other time, so feel free to do that. Okay. Thank you. Yep. Yeah, you are free to go. Thank you for stopping in though and introducing yourself.
Yes.
That's great. Thanks so much.
Yeah, it's, I don't know. I just got a new cell phone.
No. So maybe it could be provided to staff, or it'll be, we make it available for staff, and if you want to stop in. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you all.
All right.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
So we'll move into council reports. So there are written reports from myself and councillors Bird and Brown. And I've also attached a couple of things. The one that you probably find most interesting is the Area D Kaslo allocation sheet, which is the result of the Ready Grant applications that were approved. Would either of you want to speak to your reports at all, or you actually spoke at the last meeting as well? So, and Councillor Ryan, did you have a report?
Nothing to report.
All right. So, and then the Liquid Waste Monitoring Committee meeting minutes have been received. Councillor Leafwood?
Sorry, I just wanted to mention, and I'm sure people have seen the beautiful wizard statue that was donated to the for the library project. The bids are online currently.
No, it's going to be in just on the fence. There's a little bit of a dispute over that.
Oh,
but it's
okay.
gonna in person there at the site.
Okay, anyway, and I think the bids are open until June 26th. But yeah, but anyway, it's a beautiful statue. Have a look at it. Yeah.
So a little background that Ryan Cook has come for many years, and a group got together and sponsored his attendance and supplied him with the wood to do the carving. And they chose to donate it to the library as a fundraising opportunity, which was very generous. So, yeah, it was well timed because there was really not much happening in the fundraising. It's a little harder to get people excited about raising funds when they don't have a big grant in place for the construction. So they're very happy with that. And then, thank you, Councillor Beaver. And so the Liquid Waste Monitoring Committee meeting minutes have been received. So we'll move to staff reports.
Yeah, Hewitt, and I apologize in advance. It's a longer report than normal. Maybe been getting lots of good work done. So to start with, council has their strategic priorities, and one of them related to advocacy for more affordable housing. And staff met with the Kaslo Housing Society to talk about their request for funds that would help them purchase the mobile home park. So at this point, the society is still exploring their options for a mortgage. And as soon as they figure that out, which could be soon, they'll contact the village and let them know what they need from us. At this point, they've only asked for a down payment or contribution towards the down payment. And I haven't heard anything to the contrary at this point. It doesn't sound like there's any administrative requirement or formal partnership that's needed to help operate or own the mobile home park. At this point, it's just trying to figure out how to buy the property. And so financing is their focus. So we'll let council know when we learn more. Job postings, we have our Fire Smart Coordinator interviews that are underway. We have interviews, I think, all the way up through Thursday afternoon, and hoping to make a decision before the end of the week. We also have our Director of Finance and Corporate Services position that's open, and we have some interviews scheduled, but that position will remain open until it's filled. We find the right person for us. And the summer worker position that was posted and interviews have concluded. We awarded the position to a young lady named Kenya, who's a university student that I believe has worked with the village in the past. Recall, it might have been the youth fire smart coordinator position. So fantastic gal, and she'll begin work in early June. 3 updates on agreements that we have in the works: the thrift store, janitorial services for our municipal buildings, and with our campground operator. So information on all 3 of those have been sent to the village's lawyer to draft an agreement, and then we will let council know once those have all been finalized. We also have good news about the Kemble Memorial Center. Construction is beginning tomorrow on the washroom renovation. So that's on the main floor. Means that folks will have to use the upper floor for a washroom in the meantime. There'll be HVAC and sprinkler upgrades beginning in about 2 weeks. That'll entail boring of holes through the walls and lots of drilling. So what staff are going to do is advise the tenants on what days are going to affect their unit. We understand no matter where you are in the building, there's still going to be vibrations and sound that might interrupt folks. So staff are going to keep a pulse on it, hopefully mitigate some of the issue by having work performed early in the morning so that by the time folks arrive, it's not going to impact their day as much. And then we'll let council know, obviously, as work progresses, but also if there's a significant impact to tenants. I believe there's a correspondence council has been provided within this agenda that indicates, some kind of preemptive concern with disruption. So the idea again is that staff will monitor it, and then the village can kind of collectively figure out what do we do if there is an impact on the tenants. We have a annual municipal report that will be finalized by the end of June. It's a legislative requirement. And so by way of this agenda, council's been given a very, very thin draft. This includes all the information that will be in the final report, but it's enough to have a bit of a discussion with council if there is time at the end of today's meeting, just to talk about your objectives and measures. for the next year. So staff have put in there what we believe makes good sense based on council's strategic priorities and strategic plan, but worth having a conversation on. So if there is time, have a conversation today. Otherwise, we'll bring it back at the June 10th meeting and have a much deeper discussion. One thing, just to comment on this, on the financial side, as I head into the financial section of this CAO report, is our staff mentioned that our tax notices have been issued and they're out. And we're also have already drafted our annual municipal report. Staff made a comment that it's the earliest they recall it being those things being completed in a number of years. And so certainly management can't take any credit for it, but I wanted to make sure I let you council know that, you know, Jerry and Andrea and Lee are the ones that pulled it all together. So if there's any attaboys due, it's to the staff that are behind the counter and backbone of what we do. There's a first quarter financial report that council received at its last meeting, and you can look forward to a presentation from staff at the June 10th meeting to give you an update on strategic priorities, resolutions, and projects that we have on the go. We have a 5-year financial plan that's been adopted, and the mayor and I were chatting last week about, you know, we're aware that there's some discussion out in the public realm about the village finances as it relates to this $800,000 deficit that, you know, was first raised when we were chatting about capital. And there's a bit of misinformation that, you know, is worth probably clarifying in kind of a public setting. So that $800,000 is an asset renewal deficit. It means it's the, on average, that's how much additional money we would need to renew our assets. Some years it's going to be more, $3 million. Other years you might only need $200,000. But on average, around $800,000 is what we need in addition to what council is already putting towards its asset renewal program. And so that's needed to maintain our existing service levels. If we don't want it to be $800,000 on average, well, then we can adjust service levels and that'll reduce the amount of money required for asset renewal. What you might hear out in the public realm is talk about there being a budget deficit. So it's worth clarifying that legislation doesn't allow a municipality to operate with a budget deficit. We have to balance the budget every year. And so that's what Kaslo has every year, is a balanced budget, not a budget deficit. And the other point worth talking about is that we don't have any debt, which is fairly rare for a municipality, and certainly provides also an opportunity to use debt financing in order to help remedy that asset deficit that we have. So we have no debt, we don't have a budget deficit, we just know that we need to work towards increasing our asset renewal funds. And that doesn't mean that, you know, previous councils or staff mismanaged anything in any way. In fact, it's only because of previous councils and staff that we now have the information we need to understand where we're at with our assets. So if anything, they've done good work and now we understand our situation better and council can make informed decisions. And maybe just to top it up, top it up there, wrap it up, is it probably makes sense that after council's had your strategic priority session in the fall and you've received a draft budget from staff, then we should probably have some kind of open house where we can present the draft budget, let the community know what council's priorities are through the remainder of your term, and then they can ask questions that might help clarify or prevent some of that misconception about the village's finances or budget. So certainly I know it's things that this council would support, more public education, and plan for that in the early new year. For now though, we've just had May Days, another successful event, and it was nice to be joined by council handing out candy around the village electric truck. There was no major issues reported for the event, just a little stick handling and getting the helicopter rides done on the Sunday. And there'll be a debrief in the near future. We'll let council know if there's anything to be aware of for next year. Great news when it comes to Jazz Fest. The organizers have indicated that they'll have the same camping areas that they've had in previous years. So I think that's a big relief for them. There'll be the regular event requests being submitted to council that you'll see in June, and an emergency services meeting that occurs every year is being coordinated for the near future. Historical Society, there was a request that council seen for them to be relocated elsewhere at the Kemble Memorial Center. And so that issue was referred to staff, and staff are looking into it, and we'll get back to council hopefully in June with more information on what we can do to kind of accommodate them. So they don't necessarily have to be in the basement. Maybe there's other space in the building that they can utilize. So it's being worked on. The South Kaslo Development Plan. As you know, we had our ideas fair and stakeholder meetings yesterday. Council discussion occurred this morning with the consultant, and the consultants provided an early directions document, which you might recall seeing over at the Heritage Hall yesterday or this morning when the discussion occurred with council. And so that reflects the OCP, the housing needs report, our active transportation network plan, and then all of those documents that talk about our water and sewer, condition of our roads, et cetera, So all of that was used to help influence what the consultant thinks the early direction might be that we move in. Needs to be refined with input from a public survey that's open through the first part of June, as well as feedback that was received in person at the Ideas Fair, and of course all of the commentary from stakeholder meetings and commentary that council provided this morning. So still lots of work to do, but what sounds promising is the public certainly was happy to see that there's this, a diverse range of residential options for people that are in different financial positions or different stages in their life. So there's diversity there. And in the same breath, there's trails and parks that would not only go through the South Kaslo development area, but then link up with existing trail systems. So helps ensure that the community is going to be healthy into the future. Okay, I think that's good for South Kaslo. Update on a bylaw. So by the end of June, staff are hoping to issue an RFP, a request for proposal, to get help with a subdivision servicing bylaw. The last time a true revision was done was in 1996. And so needless to say, some things have changed and needs to be updated. So it's on council strategic priorities, and it's a high priority for staff to try to get that out as soon as possible. BC wildfire, we know we're kind of heading into wildfire season, and so staff had a call with BC wildfire. They want to make sure they have a direct contact with the village 24/7. And in particular, if there is an interface fire, meaning a fire between the forest and the village, then they might need to station themselves at the airport. And they're looking at using infrared technology so that they can do night flying and identify where hot spots might be that they need to deal with. And so they want to be able to advise the village at a moment's notice so that hopefully we can then let our citizens know that they don't need to be alarmed if they're hearing helicopters flying above. It's just BC wildfire. And further to the wildfire discussion, the Kaslo Fire Smart Committee had a meeting yesterday. Staff are going to review the minutes and let council know if there's any pertinent issues to be aware of. Touch on the aerodrome. There's a business that's interested in having a lease up at one of the lots that's not currently occupied. And it provides council with an opportunity to take a look at your lease agreements for the airport. Although most of them are in place all the way through the end of 2026. This would be a new one. So maybe it's worth taking a look at the structure and the rates in a similar way that you did for the thrift store. So what is the market value for leasing property at the aerodrome? And what's the process council should follow if we're going to provide assistance to a nonprofit at the aerodrome? Or what do you do if it's a for-profit commercial business. And to help kind of let the airport stakeholders know what direction those leases might be going in, as well as to make sure there's open communication about safety at the airport, you know, the use of the apron and how people and aircraft interact, as well as to talk about any improvements that folks at the airport want to see. We're going to schedule a meeting, hopefully have that in June. So council will be provided with an update after that meeting. And then when it comes to wastewater, we had our liquid waste monitoring committee met on May 5th. And they reviewed a staff report related to the liquid waste monitoring plan. The committee made a recommendation to increase cost estimates related to projects that are talked about in that plan. And that's kind of based on the CPI, but it's a bit ad hoc compared to having a professional review those cost estimates, given that they were developed in 2018. It's been a number of years, and we all know the cost of construction has far exceeded the CPI in those cases. So staff have asked, or staff are going to go back and have a consultant take an actual look at the numbers and provide us with something that not just CPI, but something we can kind of justify and have confidence in when we're looking at those numbers that are in the management plan. Another bylaw that staff are looking at, wastewater source control bylaw, that needs to be in place to help us meet the conditions of our operating permit. So we'll have an RFP out hopefully by the end of June. When it comes to our water utility, there's a Galena Avenue water connection planned for this week. No service interruptions expected. And again, another bylaw for our water system, cross connection control bylaw that staff will be looking to have developed through the fall and winter of this year. And maybe just for fun, wanted to comment on the public's interest in the lake water temperature. Let them know. We'll do our best and look into it. Thank you, Mayor Hewitt.
Thank you, CEO Baker. That was quite a lengthy report. Thank you very much. You covered a lot of ground. Are there any questions? Councillor Leaflet.
Through the chair. One of the other concerns that I've heard, from the public about the asset deficit is that the only way we can raise those funds is through raising taxation. Which if we were to do that, we have to pretty well raise it 100%. So there are other ways that we can raise that money, like, increasing our leases. And it was good to hear this morning that we can sell village land and use that for those kind of things. Expanding boundaries, increasing taxation. So we're not going to increase taxes by 100% to cover that.
Any other questions? Councillor Bird.
Through the chair, this would not have occurred to me except for that I saw one of these consumer watchdog reports on CBC the other day about this fellow whose credit rating dropped to 0 because he had gone 2 years with no debt at all. So Equifax decided that he had no credit rating. So we have no debt, and it's been mostly about a year, and going forward, maybe another year, we're going to be going 2 years with no debt. Is there any concern about our credit rating?
Through the mayor, I do not know the credit rating for the village or how that all works, but I don't think it's an issue for us. Credit rating through the Municipal Finance Authority is AAA. We all know that. So I don't think that borrowing money is going to be an issue for us.
Good to hear.
Any other questions before we move on? All right, thank you. Yeah, and on that issue, just last night, I had somebody at the Kaslo South meeting ask me about us having an $800,000 debt versus deficit. So I spent several minutes talking it through, and so yeah, it's interesting, and I think it's perhaps misunderstanding the reporting in the Valley Voice. Because it was in there and, you know, people, sometimes people, debt and deficit can get confusing. All right, so then we'll move into correspondence. We've got several items of correspondence that have been received, and CAO Baker referenced a few of them in his report. So are there any that council would like to pull for discussion? Councillor Brown.
I would like to pull the May 15th correspondence from Anne Malik, as well as the May 16th correspondence from Anne Malik, please.
All right, any others?
Through the chair, I was going to pull the correspondence, also the same actually as Matthew Brown, but he's already done so. But the one about Click, but I feel like the letter from Click, which is the occupants at the Kemmel Memorial Center, I feel like it was addressed through your report, through CAO Baker's report. So I don't feel the need to raise that one. I imagine we'll hear more in council meetings to come.
Okay. Councillor Lang or Leafwood, anything? No. Okay, all right, Councillor Brown.
Through the chair, I suppose we'll start on the May 15th one. So I'll quote directly from the correspondence. So she says, where there is not consistency within the OCP, local government must hold a public hearing on a proposed zoning bylaw, including amendments to the bylaw. So my understanding of this is when we're looking at a waterfront development and lakefront development, and there were, you know, somewhat confusion throughout this process, that may be when there's not consistency, a lack of consistency. So I'm seeking staff direction on if a public hearing is in order based on Anne's concerns and the legislation that she's cited and linked for us.
CAO Baker.
Thank you, Mayor Hewitt. So, looking for the website that was provided as a link. The challenge is that the quote you've made is part of a larger paragraph, and so you need context. It's if you have a zoning application and they want to zone the land differently than what the OCP says they'd like it to be, the community wants it to be, then you need to go through a process. If the zoning that they're seeking is already aligned and permitted by the OCP, then you don't need to have the public consultation process. So the quote that you've cited is incomplete. You forgot the other part that says if the zoning's aligned with the OCP, you're good.
I have the whole thing here, if I could quote it. If in full, that would be helpful. Supplemental.
Then
Through the chair. So in it, it says that where there is not consistency with the OCP, and so just to be sure, we're being directed that there is consistency with the OCP, so that is not so it does not actually trigger a public hearing at this point, and that any confusion around waterfront development or lakefront development and all of that is definitively decided that there is not this is within the scope of the OCP.
Through the mayor, that's correct. The zoning that exists now is aligned with the OCP. The zoning that's been requested is aligned with the OCP. There's no conflict. They're consistent. They're both fine. And so no amendment is needed to the OCP. And so there's it doesn't necessarily trigger a public hearing. Council can still have a public hearing if it feels like it needs to receive public input, and that would happen, during the bylaw adoption process. Council decided in 2023 that maybe a public hearing wasn't needed, but certainly council wanted input from the public on the proposed zoning amendment. And so that's why you asked the developer for a public information session, which is slightly different than a public hearing, but council at the time felt like it achieved something similar. Receive input from the public on this rezoning application. So the public hearing not required because the current and proposed zoning are both compliant or consistent with the OCP. Did I explain that okay?
I think so. Does that answer your question?
Does.
Michelle? Thank you. And your next item?
Thank you, through the chair. So on May 16th, I'll quote from the correspondence. It speaks of a BC municipality generally cannot directly restrict a strata lot owner. The primary authority to regulate a strata lot owner lies with the strata corporation itself through strata bylaws and rules. So Anne states that the village may be able to initially have a hand in shaping the bylaws that are filed by the owner developer with the land title office. However, over time, the strata corporation may amend or change, create or delete bylaws through a 3/4 vote of the owners and file the amendments in the land title office. So if Anne's interpretation is correct, then allowing a strata title could potentially undermine any conditions or clauses that we as a council may request. As once that strata title is approved, they will assume control of their own bylaws. So can staff confirm if this is correct? Or, would any strata bylaws or things be superseded by municipal bylaws?
So what's stated in this correspondence is true and accurate, but it's missing information that is important for council to understand. Strata bylaws are the strata's bylaws. They're not the village's bylaws. The village can still exercise control over the land through its bylaws and regulatory scheme. And some of that might include covenants on title that in some cases prohibit development or prohibit a strata from being permitted on a particular lot. The strata cannot supersede the village's bylaws. Those are the village's bylaws, and the strata needs to align its bylaws with what the village has said, or even legislation that's coming from the province. So the correspondence is true and accurate. That's about strata. It has nothing to do with how the village controls and regulates land, including the use of covenants or camping bylaws or zoning bylaws or its OCP, et cetera, et cetera. They're different. They're unrelated. Sorry, they're related, but they're distinct. They're mutually exclusive.
You have a supplemental?
Just through the chair, just further clarification then that we're a strata corporation to create bylaws for their area, they wouldn't supersede any of the municipality's bylaws. So the concern, what you're saying is perhaps not something that we would need to worry about anything that we put in place being rolled back or superseded.
Yeah, sorry, through the mayor, absolutely. Your bylaws are going to stand and be in full effect. But in order to make sure that the village's regulatory scheme is tight and sound and defensible, legally defensible, we're going to use would, if council chooses to proceed, our lawyer to review what type of bylaws do we need and what type of covenants need to be put in place in order to preserve council's intent.
Thanks for raising those items. All right, and then the last item is the BC Hydro Columbia River Basin operations updates. Then, unless somebody wants to discuss that, so that brings us to public time. So it's 6:35 now, so we've got until 6:50 for public time, and I will open up my Zoom, I think, and so I'll alternate like last time between the room and online. So if online anyone has a question, if you could use the raise hand function, that would be best. But I see a question in the room, and go ahead.
In regard to my correspondence and your business item RV park proposal. South Beach land is currently zoned industrial. Kaslo's general industrial zone permits uses that are permitted in the central business district zone. Kaslo's central business district zone permits uses that are permitted in the waterfront commercial zone. Kaslo's waterfront commercial zone permits a campground. For a campground at South Beach, rezoning isn't even necessary. The South Beach development proposal, though, is not about a campground. The developer's rezoning application is all about their land strata development. Let me give you an example. The June 6th planning report in South Beach correspondence from staff states, restrictive covenants must be placed on title to confirm that the park is for seasonal zoning, not permanent residence, or off-season storage of RV sites on the site. Clearly, the developer has other plans. A draft bylaw included in the package presented to council at your October 10th, 2023 meeting includes the following statement. The Strata Corporation will set out strict design guidelines in collaboration with the municipality regarding any temporary covers for the RV trailers remaining longer than a typical season term. Strata lot ownership or lease is neither mentioned in our OCP, nor was the public or public members of the OCP Review Steering Committee engaged on this land use. Although a campground may be in the best interests of the community, their land strata development is not. To decide tonight that the RV park proposal is in the community's best interest could be misleading, as it may infer that bylaw 1298 stands as read at first reading. You haven't had public input specific to bylaw 1298. Does council fully appreciate the long-term consequences of fair land strata development? And will council hold a public hearing prior to second reading of bylaw 1298?
Thank you, Anne. And regarding what was contained in the October correspondence that was received, that proposal was rejected in that form, and we have not finished with our discussions with QP on that at this point. So I think all things remain on the table. We have not finalized all of the terms. So I think that one, there might be movement on that. So we haven't gone there yet. And as far as the public hearing, CAO Baker had indicated that we felt that the feeling was that it wasn't necessary. But did you want to add anything else to that? That was your two questions, correct? Yeah.
Mayor Hewitt, the person who's not here in November 2022, so 23, excuse me. But it's my understanding that council felt like a public information session made good sense in order to get feedback from the public. And so at that time chose or didn't express interest in having a public hearing. That's simply my understanding. And then maybe just to add further comment to what Mayor Hewitt has said about still looking at the details of a possible purchase and sale agreement. That is, some of the specifics that Ms. Malik mentioned are related to bylaws. And we're not necessarily at the bylaw stage yet, although we're thinking about it and there's ideas out there. We're not there yet. We're still at the stage where council is considering whether it should dispose of the land through the land exchange. So a lot of those details related to concerns with what's in the bylaw get figured out when we get to that stage. At this point, we're just trying to figure out should council want to dispose of the land.
And my recollection regarding having a public meeting versus a hearing was a hearing is far more restrictive. And it didn't allow for the dialogue that was permitted at a public information session. Yeah, it would have had far more structure and there wouldn't have been the free flow of information between the public and the developers. That's my recollection of it. That's why council chose to go that route. And I am actually going to go to Randy online because he had his hand up right after Ann started to speak. So Randy, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Hewitt. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Great. So my head is exploding. My question is the proposed project actually in the interest of Kaslo? And I just want to contextualize that. As I understand it, staff is being tasked with the need to come back to you, to councilors, with an answer to that question. And from everything I've seen and heard, that answer is not forthcoming. So, given the fact that staff doesn't appear to have answered this obviously crucial question, forget all the details. Is this project in our best interest or not? I'm happy to go either way, but convince me of which answer is correct. Who is going to answer that question? And I would suggest to you, finally, that if the answer is that no one knows, you should vote right now to say no and give this developer a break. Let him know that this is never going to happen. Thank you very much. Go to Kelowna and find a project that actually fits with your vision. There you go.
So your question buried in there is you want me to tell you right now what council is going to decide later on in the meeting. And it is not staff's job. Council directs what staff does. Staff is asking us to make a decision. And so we can do that very thing that you're asking. We can either choose later in the meeting to say yes or no. So I'll leave it at that. And I can only, it is 6:44. I'll take two more questions that I didn't see who was first. So, yeah, go ahead. No, go to, throwing a blank, Russell, sorry. Too many hands up.
Councilors, Stephen is polarized in a very unpleasantly, and there's a sense of deadlock. And I sent a letter to you several days ago. I don't know how many of you noticed it, but it kind of came to me in several situations where I have been in similar deadlocks. What we did was we invoked what's called a risk benefit assessment analysis. What that means is you try to find an entity, a body, like we have, if Kaslo had a Supreme Court, we turn it over to them. That would be easy. We don't have a Supreme Court. So in this situation, you would find several individuals, 3 or 4, similar to the way in which we address the OCP, and they would put together, gather the risks and the benefits from all the sources that either want to input or that they can access. And they can put it forward, not as adjudicator, not to tell us what the outcome is, but so all of us have a really clear list of these are the risks, these are the benefits, because I don't think we've had that. So I think it could be really useful to do that, and I think we need someone who's above the battlefield, you know, honorable citizens. I can think of several I work with at United Church or at the community garden, people who are not in this polarized situation who could gather this for us. So I would ask you to consider, you know, a risk benefit appraisal assessment.
Thank you for that, Russell. And your correspondence was just uploaded to our packages today because it came after the deadline and staff chose, to be fair to everybody, to include that in our package for consideration. So I'm not sure whether every member of council has had an opportunity to read it because it just got added today. So. All right, and Jim.
So that's some old stuff. There's 3 copies there, one in there.
So technically, we've only got 3 minutes left in question
Okay,
here.
this is more.
Okay. Okay.
So basically, I'm talking about the wall. It's built along the way, and when I went to the public meeting, in 23, we were told at that meeting that the flood protection wall would be 2 feet high. From the outset, the first public meeting, the QPD maintained that the flood protection wall required to facilitate the proposal is a 2-foot high wall. This is also stated at both of the presentations to the council here. I'm presenting page 20 of the 156-page report that was at that meeting in July 27th with the details of the wall. So it's circled there. You can't see the numbers very well, but you can take it home and verify what I'm going to tell you in respect. The height of the concrete portion. So the drawing, the what's magnified in that area, that's a typical drawing. So in engineering drawings and construction drawings, if you're presented with a typical layout, then that's typical of the whole structure. Maybe not exactly, but it's a good quantifier. The height of the concrete portion is 1.2 meters, or about 4 feet. The height of the fence on top of that concrete wall is 1.2 meters, or about 4 feet. So the overall height of the wall, or most of the length of that thing, is 2.4 meters, or approximately 8 feet high. In the similar, smaller highlighted area, there are notes there regarding the maximum height of the wall. So when you take the numbers that we have in the typical drawing and apply what's there, you see that we get a height of the concrete of about 5 feet, height of the fence is 4 feet, so the wall, the barrier is 9 feet high. So staff has been instructed to review the report and make recommendations on this proposal. My question is, has staff informed council of the variations to what's stated in the proposal sent by the developer in this paperwork versus what he states publicly and to council is the height of that wall? The discrepancy between 2-foot high wall and 9 feet high.
So you're asking if staff has presented that to us?
Is council aware that staff informed council of the actual height of that wall? It doesn't seem that council knows. Are you, is council aware of the height of the wall?
Well, I have ideas about why it would be, you know, you're talking about typical, but there's probably, due to the topography, it's probably different at different spots.
Yeah, and so I can explain a little bit more. The flood construction level is 540 meters, so that it has to stay at that height. So it's pretty easy, and the information that the developer is presenting, you can, and this is what this drawing shows. The drawing showed the height of the wall along here. Well, actually, the one that's very hard to read, but you can blow up on your computer if it's in the report. And you can figure this out for yourself, and so I said, you do need to be able to read drawing things, so it's not everybody's cup of tea. But everybody I know knows someone that's carpenter or engineer that can read drawings, and what you'll find is that other than where the wall starts, is low there, but for the rest of the wall is between 8 and 9 feet high, including the fencing. And so, of interesting note is when the wall terminates at the lake, the one number that we know that we can insert into that drawing is where it says grade. The lake, for the last few decades, has never gotten over 354 meters in elevation. So that would sort of be the point where it transitions from grass to sand down the beach, more or less. I mean, I'll have this one. And the wall is going to end within about 15 meters of that, which is flat down there. So at 534 meters elevation of water at the lake, the flood construction level at the lake is 536.5 feet. So that means that the height of the wall at this terminus will be approximately 2.5 feet of concrete, 1 foot little curb step on top, 4 foot fence on that, ends up with a 9 foot, 8 inch high, 9.8 foot high wall down at the termination of the lake. That varies a little bit. There may be 1 or 2 feet of elevation rise from within that 40 feet, but it's significantly high. Major wall. So I'm hoping that council is being made aware of that, or aware, we're told there's a 2 foot wall there that is a variation in misrepresentation, so that's a long. So I'm asking this council aware of the height of this wall versus what the developer said.
So you have an answer, C.A.O. Baker? I would probably fumble it, but I just don't think we are at that stage yet where we're analyzing in detail because we haven't gotten to that step.
No analysis, this is their design. That's their design. Their design. Well,
So that was, okay, no, Dale, thank you, but you guys can take the discussion outside if you want, but we're not going to enter it. It's between you and myself.
okay, so the wall has to be built to the construction, but we know the flood construction goes like 500. It's easy enough to see what the elevations are. If the person provided that determines the height of the wall. It's not too deep.
All right, thank you for your questions. That brings us to the end of the question period. Now we'll move into our business item. The first is the camping amendment bylaw 1318/2025. Recommendation is that camping fees amendment bylaw 1318/2025 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Brown, second by Councillor Leafwood. All those in favor? Motion is carried. And recommendation is that council now resolve itself into committee of the whole, and that the council meeting be recessed at 6:54. Moved by Councillor Brown, second by Councillor Leafwood. All those in favor? Motion is carried. So we'll move into our items. First item of the committee of the whole, which is active transportation network plan. And, Ian.
The active transportation plan, filed draft version of the review package, and we have Tim Shaw from Block Consulting online, and we want to do a presentation for you to summarize the plan.
All right.
Great. Thank you, Ian, and good evening, Mayor and Council.
Welcome, Jim. Thank you for coming.
Absolutely. I'm just going to share my screen here.
Actually, I'm just gonna, Tim, I'll just take a break and just take check with somebody what the sound quality is like online.
Sure. Yeah.
Is, Laura, how, can you hear fine? Okay.
Can you hear me? I can do.
I can hear you fine, Tim,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I'll use you as a gauge then, because if you're able to hear what the discussion has been in the meeting to date, to this time. Tim, were you able to hear us fine?
Yeah, I've been able to hear you fine. No problem. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'll let you go ahead then.
And Mayor, can you see my screen? Can you see the slides?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'm just gonna.
We'll give the opportunity for people to adjust their chairs.
Oh, okay. If people want to move, have their chairs face the screen, that'll probably be better for you. Yeah. Thanks for that suggestion, Councillor Bird.
Okay, great. So let's get started. Okay, good. So good evening, Mayor and Council. Really happy to be here, at least virtually, tonight to present the Kaslo Active Transportation Network Plan, which we have the privilege of working on over the last almost a year. It's been about a year or so. My name is Tim Shaw, and I'm a senior transportation planner with Watt Consulting Group.
Okay, just a moment, Tim, if we just had to, oh.
Yeah. Can you?
Oh. You're just getting your presentation back up on the screen.
Okay, gotcha.
We lost it for a moment.
No worries.
All right. Okay. I
Okay.
think we're fine now. Thank you.
And you can see the agenda slide right now?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. So, yeah, my name is Tim Shaw, and I'm a senior transportation planner with Watt. And I had the privilege of leading this project, the Active Transportation Network Plan, with my colleague Emma Watts, who's not here tonight, but she did a lot of the heavy lifting on this project. So full kudos to her, and of course my former colleague Nathan Carswell, who initially led this project. So in terms of I've got a 10 to 15 minute presentation here, and I'll take you through essentially the highlights of the plan, which of course is available online and in the agenda package. So we'll talk about just the overview of the project in terms of why we did it, review the engagement process, talk about the vision and objectives for the Active Transportation Network Plan. Then we'll talk about what the future Active Transportation Network looks like, or what we've recommended. Then we'll get into the speed limit reduction policy, and then close with implementation and next steps. So as far as the project purpose goes, the Active Transportation Network Plan really is all about establishing a vision and roadmap for managing how people walk, bike, and roll around Kaslo. The plan's overarching vision is to create a connected, accessible, and sustainable active transportation network to be used by residents and visitors of all ages and abilities for commuting, recreation, and all other trips. There are three specific goals with this project in terms of what it was trying to achieve. First, there's encourage healthy and active lifestyles for all residents by supporting alternative transportation modes, while at the same time reducing environmental impacts. Promote inclusion and equality by ensuring universal design and addressing accessibility-related issues. And then lastly, prioritize safety through intersection and crosswalk improvements, and by creating safe pedestrian environments with the implementation of traffic calming. There was a three-phase approach that we followed, and like I said, we kicked this off about a year ago. I think it was last May 2024, and that first phase, which took place that summer, was really focused on understanding barriers and challenges within the active transportation network. To do that, we did a couple of site visits, so in the community, looking at the road network, looking at speed limits, looking at sidewalk conditions, that kind of thing. We collected traffic data as well. We also collected ICBC collision data. So a pretty in-depth analysis to really understand the baseline conditions of Kaslo's active transportation network. And then we entered the second phase, so fall 2024, which we call the listening phase, which is really focused on the public engagement side of things. And I'll speak more about that in a second. And then from essentially early part of 2025, call it January to April, we developed the plan. And we also went back to the community through a questionnaire and an open house back on April 1st. So in terms of the engagement process, two rounds. That first round was part of the listening phase, focused on understanding barriers, opportunities, and testing some preliminary recommendations with the community. So we did 3 activities: a school mapping exercise. You can see that map up there on the slide. That was with JV Humphreys School, of course, and we had 53 worksheets completed from students. Essentially, students had a chance to mark up a map, identifying how they travel to school currently, the routes that they take to get to school, and then identifying any places they don't feel safe in terms of crosswalks, sidewalk connections, that kind of thing. It was very valuable, and we got some very, very good insights, which helped inform the recommendations. We also did key audience interviews with 2 interviews, one with Mayor Hewitt and also with Councillor Bird, to just understand and get some more context about what some of the key challenges are in the community with respect to the active transportation network. And then finally, the key audience workshop that was back in December 2024, where we did an online virtual workshop with 14 members representing organizations from the community, where we started to present some of the preliminary recommendations and the network that we were starting to develop to get feedback before we went too far. And the second round there, so once we developed the draft plan, we went back to the community. Like I said, that was back in March and April. There was a community open house. It was nice to see several people there. And then we had an online questionnaire as well, where people had a chance to say, hey, we asked questions around, did we get the plan right? Did we miss anything? Any feedback on the priority improvement areas and that kind of thing, which I'll get more into that in my presentation. Some of the key takeaways from the first round there, first round of engagement: some students that participated in that school mapping exercise noted that they do not feel safe crossing roadways, such as the existing mid-block crossing on Highway 31A at C Avenue. The lack of pedestrian crossings at Highway 31 and 5th Street. It's noted a crossing is desired, but it's noted that it would be difficult for heavy trucks to come down to a stop while traveling downhill, especially during the winter months. We heard loud and clear support for traffic calming devices near the skate park, Vimy Park, and the campground area, and a desire to just slow vehicles down in that area because of all the people recreating and children playing on the street and that kind of thing. And then strong support for multi-use pathways as an active transportation facility type for the village. In terms of the vision for the active transportation plan, this is what we settled on based on some feedback and some refinement. And I'll just read it for the benefit of the audience. Kaslo is a community where its active transportation network is inclusive, accessible, and connected for its citizens and its visitors. Its active transportation network and its recreational offerings serves as a model for small mountain communities across British Columbia. Its active transportation network also works for all road users and provides choice, regardless of how people choose to get to their destinations. A network of choices also supports Kaslo's aspirations to strengthen community well-being, sustainability, and preserve its natural environment. To support that vision, we did have some very specific objectives just to help sort of inform the recommendations and make it easier to track progress on implementation of the plan. So we had design for all ages and abilities, fill in gaps in the network, foster a culture of active transportation, and lastly, staying connected to nature. Because we know active transportation could facilitate trips to trails and better connections to nature and that kind of thing. So in terms of the future active transportation network, there's a lot of detail, of course, in the plan, but just at a fairly high level for the purposes of this presentation, this slide here is showing you the ultimate network. So it's showing you kind of everything, the priority improvement areas, all the different facilities, the active transportation facilities that we recommended. And really what the ultimate network is trying to convey here is that it's sort of a long-term vision for the future network, recognizing that you can't build an active transportation network overnight, especially in smaller communities. It takes time, it takes years, but this is sort of a roadmap for what it could look like over time. Regional connections are obviously important. Connections between the priority improvement areas, which I'll speak to in a second. And what we heard from the community was that they largely agreed with the direction of this network, but many would like to see improvements to existing infrastructure first before carrying out too many projects to expand the network. So the priority improvement areas, those are shown on the map here in blue. So you can see the downtown area, we've got Forest Street, part of Front Street and Water. We've got J.V. Humphreys Elementary School, of course, over here. We've got the Vimy Park Ring Road area to the west. We're here on this side, and then pardon me, to the east. And then we've got Highway 31 Kaslo River crossing just down over here. So what the priority improvement areas mean and how we define them is essentially there's already active transportation travel occurring on these corridors, which is great, but there's an opportunity to make them even safer and more comfortable by investing in some active transportation improvements. And that takes many different forms, and I'll tell you about that right now. So for Front Street, the main recommendations for Front Street include a new mid-block crosswalk, just to make it easier and safer for people to make that crossing, additional lighting, adding some curb extensions to crosswalks at 5th Street, 4th Street. So just an example, that is the photo on the bottom of what that can look like. And curb extensions just help slow vehicles down. That's essentially the purpose of them. They're a traffic calming measure. And then essentially what we heard from the community on that is that there's support for the changes on Front Street, but some concern about potential loss of on-street parking that would come with a mid-block crossing. So that's a trade-off, of course, that the village is going to have to consider moving forward. For Water Street here, based on again the background research, the engagement, and our recommendations, or our analysis and the recommendation. The recommendation is to convert Water Street to a one-way in the westbound direction, consistent with recommendations in the village's ICBC signs and markings field review that was also done recently or completed recently. Maintain parking on the south side, shifting the angle parking over on the north side, and then more importantly, adding a buffer landscaping and a 3.5 meter wide sidewalk on the north side, as you can see in that cross section there. Really just to improve the pedestrian experience, give them more space, a bit more separation from the roadway. In terms of what we heard on that, some mixed feedback, excuse me. In our round 2 engagement, there was support for pedestrian infrastructure, so support for widening that facility, making it more comfortable, but concern from some about the conversion to a one-way street, saying that could have adverse impacts on traffic operations, so on and so forth. So noted, that was clear, when we've captured that feedback in the plan. Continuing with priority improvement area 1, the downtown, 4th Street, C Avenue to Front Street. So I guess we'll start from sort of north and head south. So the recommendations you can see in the cross sections here. So 4th Street between A Avenue and Front Street, a multi-use pathway on the west side, and followed by a parking lane, the 2 driving lanes, and then another parking lane sidewalk. And then between B Avenue and A Avenue, we're calling a quick build multi-use pathway. So it's more cost effective, it's easier to build, doesn't require as much infrastructure and engineering work. So you can have that as well, and still have of course, the 2 driving lanes, and then an adaptive sidewalk on the other side, which is just essentially like a sidewalk, except with the curb, and it's more affordable, more cost efficient to build. Continuing on here, 4th Street between B Avenue and A Avenue, south segment there, continuing with the multi-use pathway. So you have that connection, that nice connectivity in and out of the town. And you can see the rest of the cross section there. And then between C Avenue and B Avenue, that multi-use pathway would also again continue along that west side. with parking on both sides and a sidewalk on the other side. So really multi-use pathway. Again, we heard support from the community that that is a good facility type. It's appropriate for the Kaslo context, and it could really make it easier for folks to bike, walk, roll, and use another form of active transportation to get in and out of the village, out of the downtown. Priority improvement area 2. So this is the school and around the school. So covered stairway from the intersection of C Avenue and 5th Street to the school field. So just trying to improve connectivity for children trying to get to and from school from more of the downtown area. Off-street pathway along the school field perimeter. A multi-use pathway on the north side of C Avenue from the school field to 6th Street and east of 6th Street to C Avenue to Highway 31. So that's essentially showing this here, this purple dash line on 6th Avenue and then right to the school. And then advisory lanes on C Avenue and B Avenue. See the green dash lines there. An advisory lane is shown in this photo on a slide just to help folks understand. And essentially, in short, it's the vehicles would share that center lane, and they'd have to yield to each other by essentially going into the active transportation lane where people are walking and biking. The whole idea of this is that it helps slow vehicles down. It's essentially a traffic calming measure, and it's been done in rural communities across North America with pretty good success. And finally, working with the Ministry of Transportation and Transit to upgrade the crosswalk on Highway 31A and C Avenue with advanced warning signs and flashers. That's based on feedback, again, we heard from the community. Priority improvement area 3, Vimy Ring Road and First. So really, this came up a lot in our second round of engagement and a lot of support for what we came up with in terms of adding speed tables. So actually speed humps to slow vehicles down, mid-block crossings, signage and pavement markings to really slow down vehicles. So signage like this on a slide where it really tells drivers that there's children and others playing on the streets, so slow down. Pavement markings like you see in this photo down here, really to alert drivers again that they're in an area where they should be driving slowly. And like I said, very strong support from the community to see traffic calming improvements in this particular area. Finally, priority improvement area 4, Highway 31 Kaslo River crossing, proposing a pedestrian crossing at Highway 31 and Spruce Avenue, just to make it easier and safer for folks to cross the highway. Protected multi-use pathway on the west side of the highway from Arena Avenue all the way to Spruce Avenue. So that would, once it's built in the future, if it's built, it would connect nicely to the recommendations for the multi-use pathway in the downtown. And then general support, we heard from the community, general support for these recommended improvements. I should add and be very clear that, of course, the highway is under the ministry's jurisdiction. And we did engage with the ministry throughout this project to make sure we were being transparent about what we were recommending as part of this plan. So just getting to the end of my presentation here, another key recommendation in the active transportation plan is what we're calling the speed limit reduction policy. So essentially what that is, and it's shown in this map here in terms of the area we're recommending it be in effect. It'd be a blanket 30km/h speed limit reduction for Lower Kaslo. Obviously, regular enforcement would be required for that to be effective and for people to be compliant. Highway 31 would be excluded because that's under the ministry's jurisdiction. Other streets in the village, of course, could be candidates for lower speeds or 30km/h speed limit. But really a study would need to be done, or we're recommending a study be done to see if that's actually warranted. In terms of what we heard on a speed limit reduction policy in the engagement, fairly strong support with, again, the need for more traffic calming, especially in the Vimy Park area. So essentially people saying, yes, speed limits we'd love to see that, but don't forget about traffic calming, which actually helps slow vehicles down. As far as implementation and next steps, we have a whole implementation section in the AT plan where we say this is what we recommend moving forward in terms of short-term, medium-term, and long-term actions. And also all the recommendations are sort of categorized in a table format. Our professional recommendation in terms of what should be done first when it comes to the priority improvement areas are JV Humphreys Elementary Secondary, rather, Vimy Park Ring Road, the downtown, and Highway 31 Kaslo River crossing. How we came up with that, we had some criteria from existing facility, quick buildability, network build out, and project complexity. Don't have time to go into all of those, but the point is that we looked at those criteria to help determine the recommended order of those priority improvement areas. Of course, that is entirely up to the village council to decide ultimately which priority improvement area they would like to pursue first. And with that, thank you very much for listening to my presentation. I look forward to questions.
Thank you, Jim. So are there any questions from council for Tim? Councillor Leafwood.
To the chair. In your engagement, did you have much engagement with people that had disabilities, like physical or visual or hearing impaired?
Through the chair to, sorry, I don't see which councillor that is, pardon me.
Councillor.
I'm over in the corner here, right beside. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, councillor, for that question. The short answer is no, we did not do very much engagement with that community. Not because it wasn't important. It's just because we were working with a defined budget and schedule, and we wanted to. Working with village staff, we decided to go with doing the student mapping exercise to make sure we heard from the school community, and we also did the interviews, like I said. But we did, as far as I remember, councillor, for the workshop, we did invite the accessibility committee, and I don't believe they were able to attend. But Ian can correct me if I'm wrong on that. So there was an opportunity extended to that group as part of that workshop, but I do not recall immediately at this moment if they actually attended. Ian, do you want to speak to that?
Thank you.
Yes, Mary, yes, we did have members of the accessibility committee.
Any other questions? Councillor Brown.
To the chair. When in the same vein as Councillor Leithwood, when you were looking at possibilities, was there any consideration of individuals who are in a wheelchair to be able to access the lake? Right now, there's no way for them to get through the beach or the sand to be actually able to get to the water. And was there any consideration of creating a path that would allow a wheelchair to access the lake?
Through the chair, that didn't emerge as a particular recommendation as part of our work. Again, not to say that it's not important. We just wanted to focus on what we, in my presentation, the priority improvement areas, to really look at what can benefit the most users in Kaslo to connect to the key destinations.
Supplemental? No? Okay. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you very much. That was the last of the questions. And I think I was able to ask all of mine because I was part of the engagement session. So thank you for that. So our next steps, agenda out is if council is comfortable with the recommendation that the committee recommends the adoption of the active transportation network plan as presented. Moved by Councillor Bird and seconded by Councillor Lang. Any discussion? Councillor Bird.
Through the chair, were we to adopt this as presented, just for clarity, that doesn't necessarily bind us to any specifics. It just allows us to move forward with the framework and from which to work with.
Okay. I'll look to Ian for the.
Yes, Mayor, absolutely. We don't have to adopt any particular recommendation for even any order, but these are certainly starting points for looking at improvements that can be done and hoping to that application.
right, so we'll call the question. All those in favor? That motion is carried. Okay, thank you. So our next item is 8.2, and that is the RV park proposal. Ask first if the council has any questions. Thanks, Ian. For CAO Dunlop? Or if anyone has. Oh, you said it twice. CAO Baker. You just get it. Oh, okay. Oh, we could take a brief recess if you wish. Let. All right. So are there any questions for CAO Baker? Right. Then, Councillor Leafwood.
This is a process question. So we're still in committee of whole.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So any recommendations we make would then just get risen to the regular
Yes.
meeting. Okay,
That's correct. Councillor Lang?
Sorry, Mrs. President, I didn't quite hear that. So it will go to the next meeting?
No, we would just, the last recommendation is either to rise and report if we do make a resolution, or rise without reporting if we make no recommendation. So, if anyone wish to make a recommendation or have discussion,
Well, you feel free. I've talked a lot.
Councillor Lang?
Yeah, I'd like to make a recommendation that council instruct staff to prepare the terms of reference to facilitate the exchange of property on the South Beach land. This does not commit council to any particular course of action, but it does give us a framework to see what exactly the options are.
Okay, so we'll have staff repeat that so we know, everybody knows what the recommendation, the resolution is that you're proposing.
The motion would be that staff prepare terms of reference to facilitate the exchange of land in relation to the proposed RV park. Is that fair? Correct.
I'll second for discussion.
Did you want to open, and then I'll go to Councillor Leafwood for discussion? Did you want to make any comments regarding your motion, or?
No, that's fine.
Okay,
I think it's pretty clear.
yeah, okay, and Councillor Leafwood then for discussion.
To the chair. You know, even though supporting the motion to move forward, I still have some questions about things like the barrel land strata and what percentage would be stratified and what would be campground. So we still would be able to negotiate those terms or consider those in our moving forward.
Through the mayor, what staff would suggest is if there's conditions that council would like included or potentially included in these terms of reference, that staff be advised so that we can chat with their lawyer to figure out, is it something that belongs in this terms of reference, which really is just the heads of terms of a purchase and sale agreement. Does it belong in there, or is it something that would come up through development of an RV camping bylaw or a zoning bylaw, or even by way of a covenant? So staff really need to know what you might like to have.
So did you have anything specific at this time that you wanted to add, or?
Well, through the chair, I'm still really confused about a barrel land strata and what the implications of that are for like the OCP and, you know, what it would look like. I just really don't understand that very well. So really, I'm looking for clarification as to what exactly that means, if that was going to be part of the agreement.
Mayor, so barrel strata is simply the instead of having a large lot, 25 foot wide, 100 feet deep, you've got smaller lots. Much smaller than what you would normally subdivide into. And then it allows for private ownership of that individual lot, and then communal ownership of roads and washrooms and those kinds of things. So how does it relate to the OCP? Well, from what staff recall, the OCP and its zoning regulations do not expressly prohibit bare land strata as it relates to this RV park proposal. And even if for some reason it did, it doesn't mean that it could be lawfully upheld in the court of law. It needs to be justifiable. Why would a municipality prohibit bare land strata from being a type of ownership on a particular piece of land? You'd have to back it up. There'd have to be a good reason. And the bare land strata regulations detail what the reasons could be. It's not necessarily the place of the OCP or even council to prohibit it. It's when it comes to the village's approving officer. They need to look at the village's bylaws and regulations as well as provincial regulations and determine if there's it's not congruent, like if it's actually not legally allowed, which in this case, staff don't believe is the case at all. Other reasons why an approving officer might decline to subdivide as bare land strata might be environmental concerns like floods or just can't build it, it's not constructible in some way. But it has to be defensible, because if the developer doesn't agree, well, they have a right to know what the grounds were. And if they want, they can challenge it, it can go to court. And in many cases, the municipality's been told you can't prohibit the bare land strata in this case. It's not, there's no good reason, and so it gets overturned. So it might be worth discussing what's council's concerns with bare land strata. What's wrong with that type of ownership? What's we worried about?
Supplemental?
Yeah, I'm not really sure whether it's a good idea or a bad idea. I just didn't really understand it all. And explaining kind of what council's position. The other piece of what I'm still confused about is like the non-motorized. What exactly does that mean? So that means like no jet skis or anything like that would be allowed in the waterfront area. And also, does that mean not like motorized things like ATV? That seems to be a concern of people if it was in the RV park.
Mayor, so if staff understand correctly, the issue we're talking about is with respect to a motorized boat launch. So motorized boat launch might have a vehicle and a trailer putting a boat into the water that then has an engine on it. And so based on the last meeting in which the developer was present, I believe they kind of backed off on the idea of a motorized boat launch and said that, look, let's not let that become an issue here. Let's just park that. We can talk about it at a later time. Let's just focus on the core here of the RV park. And so from staff's perspective, I don't think a motorized boat launch is something like a hurdle that council necessarily needs to overcome right now, because the developers kind of backed off on requiring it or wanting it to be a part of this proposal package. With respect to ATVs and other ATVs or motorized boats in the water, you can't prohibit motorized boats from being in the water. That's not it. It's simply the construction of a boat launch that would allow motorized vehicles to access in and out of the water. And then as far as ATVs, perhaps around the campground, I don't think we're going to have the ability to regulate what folks do on their private property, driving an ATV or not. In public road, no, probably can't, but private's different.
Thank you.
Councilor Booth.
Through the chair. So I'm in favor of the idea of moving forward and drafting terms of reference on how we do that. In order to consolidate the land, step one is consolidate the land. But that involves a purchase sale agreement. And within that agreement, I think of crucial importance to the developer and the community is the camping, the bylaw, the specific bylaw 1298. And as a condition of sale, if we examine and allow as much public input, and I would go so far as like a public hearing may be appropriate, maybe some other way of gathering public input on the bylaw 1298, and perhaps along in keeping with Mr. Precious's ideas of a cost of a what was that, risk benefit analysis, that it would be a condition of sale that if we ended up with something that we as a council and we as a community could finally agree on what the contents of that bill 1298, which we have not brought to second reading and is not yet ready for discussion. But that could be something that the developer, if they find that they cannot operate a business plan that in their interests, based, considering the restraints of the bylaw 1298, they would have that would be a condition of sale. They could walk away from any negotiation we have to consolidate the land. I still think consolidating the land is vitally important, and one would hope that we would be able to find risk constraints that council and the community can impose, that the developer can live with and operate with, and that we will end up with a consolidated land and good access to the lake. But I also could see that, full public participation in drafting the bylaw 1298, and if whatever we come up with then is acceptable to the developer, well, then we can proceed and we can get all of these other restraints or amenities figured out as we go. So I don't think my idea counteracts Councillor Lang's motion. I think in due time that we can negotiate a purchase and sale agreement, and there will be conditions, and if they're not favorable to the developer walks away. If they're not favorable to us, then same thing.
Theo Baker?
So a couple of things, so please bear with me. So it's worth identifying, because I keep hearing talk about public hearing. So public hearing is a legal proceeding in which the elected officials, like sit at the front of the room, and individuals who believe have an interest in a proposed bylaw or the property that would be subject to a proposed rezoning bylaw in this case, have an opportunity to make representation to council and express how they're being affected by it. And council's role, the elected official's role, is to hear them. There's no conversation. It's a one-way. The public speaks, the elected officials listen. There's no two-way conversation. And the developer is not part of the equation. It's the public and council. Council hears the information. Once council, the elected officials have heard the information and received it, and the hearing is over, they are no longer allowed to receive any new information. That's it. It's done. And so although I wasn't here in 2023 when the decision was made not to have a public hearing, that might have been part of the reason, because it doesn't seem like the right mechanism. And another piece of it is throughout that public hearing, the elected officials must remain open to being persuaded by the public. You're not allowed to publicly declare, I've already made up my mind, I'm not approving this rezoning bylaw, I don't care. That's going to get you dragged into court by the developer because it's not legal. You have to remain open. What's different about a public information session is It's not mandatory, it's not required. Sometimes a developer will have a public information system because they're motivated to engage with the public and let them know what's going on. In Kaslo's case, council decided we'd actually like to request that the developer do that. We'd like that. And we'd like that two-way communication between the public and the developer, I guess three-way in this case, and possibly council being present to hear the conversation and maybe answer questions if they have wanted. So it's a much more relaxed and agreeable way, and I think gets at what council probably wanted versus a public hearing. So I don't know if public hearing is what we want. To sit in silence and listen to the public tell you how they're affected, and then walk out the door and that's it. When it comes to bylaws, as much as we have bylaw 1298 that's been drafted, in some respects, I would just park it off to the side and know that if council decides to proceed with a purchase and sale agreement, then the bylaws are going to be rewritten by our lawyer. And it might not just be a rezoning bylaw, it might be an RV park bylaw or anything else that the lawyers believe achieves your goal or purpose here. So I don't know if I would get hung up on bylaw 1298 right now and what it says. It's going to change based on what council wants. And the point in the process when that happens would be after a purchase and sale agreement is signed. So Councillor Bird has described the process for a purchase and sale agreement. We get everything on the table and all the conditions that would need to be met in order for the transfer to proceed. And one of those conditions is that both sides agree on what bylaws are needed to meet council and the developer's objectives. So the bylaw is part of the process, and what makes sense from a like a development process point of view is to proceed with the purchase and sale agreement, and then look at these bylaws, development permits, covenants that go on title, and all of those pieces.
Did you have supplemental?
Through the chair, I guess I was thinking of the camping bylaw, and 1298 is the rezoning bylaw. And so we haven't yet got to the point where we have a camping, like
RV park bylaw?
an RV park bylaw. We do have a camping bylaw, but not a bylaw that would cover the form of whether it's strata or camping or anything like that. No limitations on it because the rezoning bylaw allows for strata as it stands now. 1298 allows for strata ownership within that new zone.
Through the mayor, the village does not have a regulatory scheme that prohibits bare land strata, period. And if council put a regulatory scheme in place to prohibit bare land strata, we would need to consult with a lawyer to make sure that it's lawful and would actually stand up in a court of law. The bare land strata regulations identifies under what conditions the approving officer can deny a bare land strata application. So it's not just because council decides how many lots there could be in a bare land strata or that it's not allowed at all does not mean that it would be legal. What would be important would be for council to identify things like that they would like to see and provide staff an opportunity to chat with our lawyer and determine what's the best mechanism to try to meet council's needs, if at all possible.
Does that answer the questions? Wait, Councillor Brown.
Through the chair, I just have a few points of discussion. So the first being, as fairly recently, we all voted, or as council, we voted to deny this plan. I'm wondering what has changed meaningfully that would change our votes. Second, mirroring things that have been called by the public. Often the proponents for this cite economic development as a big reason as to why we would move forward with this. Yet without a risk benefit or analysis, then those claims are unclear at best. It's hard to determine whether there will be economic development that come from this. And there's no definitive studies or direction that has been given to us that will say, yes, these are the clear economic benefits, these are the risks, this is what you're getting into. Thirdly, and this one's kind of important, they're all important to me, but this one's particularly important to me. So since I have sat as a counselor, we've been looking for meaningful ways to engage our community and to get them interested and to get them to show up and to lend their voices to the decisions that we're making. And in this particular case, we have had an overwhelming amount of community engagement. Amongst my generation and generations that are younger than me, there's an incredible amount of apathy and distrust in elected officials. And oftentimes this comes because their voice, when they express their concerns in a democratic way, is ignored by elected officials. And for us to find an issue that people are so passionate about here, I think it would be a real mistake to consider that a vocal minority. I think that we need to, or for myself, I really very seriously take, that we're finally getting this community engagement. If we ignore the voice of the community, then we're going to have harder and harder times to get them to engage with us around Kaslo South, around the active transportation network plan. All of these big things that we're doing where we require public trust are being eroded by ignoring the engagement that community members are giving us. And so I worry about the future of people trusting politicians, wanting to vote in elections, and believing that these things are a fruitful way to help make change in your community. But lastly, I would just say that I believe that this plan is not in the best interest of our community, and that is why I will be voting against the motion.
As far as the plan, through the chair, as far as the plan that has been presented to us, and I was first going to make that motion, which got referred, that not in favor of the plan as it stands. And I agree that the plan as revised and does not seem significantly different. Notwithstanding the fact that I still don't particularly like the plan, and I would like to see changes, I do think that the process will allow us to make those kind of changes working together. And it's not a unitary voice saying that plan is awful. It is not. The correspondence that we've received in the last few days, and which are included in this package as a late item, attest to that. I'm willing to believe that if we can achieve a consolidation of the two parcels, that we can work towards making something that over time is in the best interests of our community. And I certainly think that consolidating the parcels is in the best interest of our community. That's why I would like to go forward with that plan of consolidating the parcels. That I must say that the recommendation that we have in front of us, the council decide whether the RV park proposal is in the best interest of the community. If you to read that narrowly, then I'd be right back to where I was, where I say, no, it is not in the best interest of the community. Consolidating the land into parcels that are clearly private and public, I think, is in the best interest of the community. Question we have before us is, will we get to a place where the consolidation of the land, which I do believe is in the best interest of the community, results in activity that we can all feel over time worked out?
Councillor, to the chair. Community engagement, in my mind, and my career was listening to people. I think that though we may not have done some of what the community wanted, which has partly been explained by CAO Baker, you know, this has taken us many, many months. And when you engage the community, your job as a councillor is to listen and take what people say, and with all of the other factors that we have to factor in, make a decision. So to say that we're not, you know, really respecting the community engagement, I think we did. I mean, we had lots of letters and we read every single one of them. And because we're not voting in one way or the other, doesn't mean we're not engaging or listening. And I think that given the fact that it has taken us this long, I think we have listened and we have respected and appreciated the comments that the public have brought forward on both sides, because lately we've been getting quite a few letters of support for the project. So, you know, I think it's important that we, you know, understand what exactly engagement is and our role in it.
Councillor Brown.
Through the chair. So in response to CO Baker's comments about a public hearing, what I have been hearing from the public through their communication, when you look at a public hearing and it is a one-way scenario where they're providing us information and we're not able to talk back to them, what I've consistently heard is that the public doesn't feel that they've been given sufficient time to speak about their concerns. When they're given 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever constraint that we put upon them, there's been a perception amongst the public that the developers have been given access to more unlimited time than public who are given a 15-minute period for the hundreds of people that are involved. So I can see how a public hearing would be fruitful in that it would allow the public to truly feel that they were heard. I feel like they have heard what our considerations are and some of the things that we're going through. And so I suppose I'm just speaking in favor of a public hearing in the sense that, not that I don't want to have a meaningful two-way conversation engagement, which is something that we all have wanted, which is why we've gone about it the way we have. But perhaps for the segments of the population that don't feel that they've had sufficient time to be able to state their concerns, a public hearing would allow that time to state their concerns without council taking up time in that meeting, but just saying there to listen and hear what they're saying without the constraints of a 15-minute question period.
Okay. I think that's up to council to make that decision. And I just wanted to speak to your one about economic development. That could be something that if council agrees to make that one of the conditions, right? We haven't sat down and done that. So, so that does not, again, as the Councillor Bird has stated, it doesn't come into play at this point. And we're not voting on the recommendation in the package, which is why I didn't read it. I think that was CAO asking us to actually do something, right? Either we're saying no definitively, or we're wanting to move forward, because staff has spent a lot of time on this. A lot of people have spent a lot of time. The public has spent a lot of time doing their research, and we've heard what they've said. And, you know, we might not be, like you said, not responding to each and every one's direct concerns, and we're not going to make everybody happy ever. But we have been listening, just because staff hasn't individually replied to each one, which would be a very onerous task. You know, as was stated, there was, you know, over 200 items of correspondence. Is that really they're on an agenda. We've read them as council. Do we really need to have staff do that? I think that's unreasonable, but, so can we read the motion again? And I'll see if council is ready for me to call the question.
Yes, Mayor, do you mind if I just provided one piece of information in relation to this motion? So in, I believe it was August of 2024, a similar resolution was carried. Direction was given to staff to develop the head terms and conditions of a purchase and sale agreement. And so from August through November, that's what was done with our lawyer. And in December, the head terms and conditions were provided to council to consider and are effectively the same with some additions to what you received as an attachment. That's the key terms and conditions are the head terms and conditions of a purchase and sale agreement. And so in many respects, you already have what the resolution asks for, which is the terms of reference to facilitate an exchange. You in some real respect, you already have it. It's the terms and conditions that are attached. And all that the lawyer is waiting for is for council to say, yep, those terms of reference are good. Those terms and conditions are good. And then it can draft the physical document that you would sign. So you're, as much as council's free to proceed with this resolution, I just wanted to clarify, very similar resolution in August, and you have those terms of reference already.
Councillor Bird?
Through the chair, so we haven't actually revisited the terms of the purchase agreement in a long time. We've talked about a lot of other things, but and it's been a long time since I've read it, actually, the purchase and sale agreement that was drafted. There has been probably new information, and we certainly had been doing a lot of debate about all the different aspects of it. And I'm today to say, let's go ahead and sign the terms and condition. If that is, if you're suggesting that we've already gone ahead and created the purchase and sale agreement and that we have all agreed to it, that's not happened, has it? But we haven't actually debated that document. We've talked about a lot of other things since, but we haven't revisited that document in months.
It's part of our package. It's the last few pages of the RV park proposal. Sorry to blow that, but it's in there. And that was, so council was familiar with what was in the terms and conditions previously.
My apologies.
No, that's okay. I wondered if the resolution, whether it wasn't terms of reference that you meant, but I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but did you mean the terms and conditions of the sale agreement, or can you read it back what we do have on the floor that's moved and seconded?
Thank you, Mayor Hewitt. Staff prepared the terms and reference.
Or no yes.
The terms of reference to facilitate the exchange of land in relation to the proposed RV park.
Okay, I acknowledge that the staff has already done that work. But like Councillor Bird said, it's been so long since we talked about this. Personally, I've forgotten a lot of the detail. So what I'm recommending is that we revisit it, and we've had mountains of information provided to us since that time. Have we changed our mind on any of the terms that are included in that agreement? And so I'm asking that we schedule a meeting or include it in part of the next meeting in order to review what was presented to us back last fall, because quite frankly, I don't. at my age, I'm a little fuzzy on details, so I think we would benefit from that. Now, how that affects the motion, I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah, that isn't what it's saying. Because it doesn't give instructions for, to my way of thinking, it doesn't give instruction to staff to amend the terms and conditions based upon the feedback received, because we've all given feedback at various meetings and as to what other things we would like in it. I thought your resolution was to move forward with it, not for it to be amended and brought back for council discussion. That wasn't what was just read out to my ears anyhow.
I don't know what to say other than I'd like to see the document brought in front of council so we can review it and decide, make a final decision whether we want to go ahead with it or not.
I'll go to Councillor Bird.
So for instance, this is a question of tone, I guess, rather than, a mutual condition is the adoption of proposed bylaw number 1298 for C4 commercial recreation RV camping. It's been proposed, but I don't want to see that particular one. It's the language here. Adoption of bylaw 1298 as proposed and amended as the case may be as a mutual condition. That helps me. But that document, which I have read several times, but it's been a while, and I apologize for not having read it tonight or in the last 24 hours. That's the kind of language that makes me nervous about, let's say, okay, go ahead, let's start working on the terms, go ahead and sign this agreement to get to the point where we can sign a purchase and sale. So these are the key terms and conditions, but some of them are worded in such a way that I'm uncomfortable. For instance, that one about as a mutual condition that we adopt, that one of the conditions is the adoption of the proposed bylaw, which we have not even seconded or discussed.
Councillor Lang?
Would it be possible to withdraw the motion and go with what CIO Baker has written here, which is publish notice of the village's intent to dispose of lowered allowances are subject to the RP park land transfer proposal. Secondly, reach consensus on the key terms and conditions of the purchase and sale agreement, which is what I'm trying to get to.
Okay, so on the request for decision, is that what you're reading from? The request for decision, that's what you're reading from? Okay.
It makes sense to, just for simplicity's sake, to keep these two possible motions separate. Start with the first one, that the village issue notice of disposition for lands related to the RV park proposal. And then just let council discuss that. And then you can come back to what do we do with the purchase and sale agreement.
So, but at this point, Councillor Lang has indicated that you want to withdraw that motion and so we need the seconder to agree to that if you want to withdraw the motion that you made. So you would seconder? Okay, so that motion is then withdrawn and Councillor Bird?
I was mistaken with raising my hand.
Oh, okay, all right. So then, say,
Motion.
yes, please.
The village issue a notice of disposition for the lands subject to the RV park proposal.
So moved by Councillor Lang, seconded by Councillor Leafwood. Discussion.
To the chair. So when you provide notice, that goes like that's advertised to the public. All right,
The mayor, correct, the staff would have the village's lawyer draft the verbiage for the notice of disposition to ensure it meets legislative requirements and includes all of the details required. It would require confirmation of exactly what lots are subject to disposition. So it might take a few weeks before the disposition is actually published, but you're correct. It would be put in the newspaper, the website, and our bulletin boards.
and people are then invited to comment on that as well, are they not?
Yes.
Right, so that is another opportunity for public input.
So that motion was moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Would you like your negative vote recorded?
I would indeed.
Okay, that motion carries. And then did you want a subsequent motion then? Or just wait until the other one goes through? We've got the advertising, because is that presumptive to start work? Or can we do those things in tandem? And I think council would have to do some homework and read over the current terms and conditions and send to CAO. So we'll have them leave them as they are, but then have appended to the bottom the ones that we want to discuss, to add, change, remove. And then we can have a discussion at the next meeting about that. And it doesn't mean that you have to wait until the agenda is published. We can do that now because we know what the current one is because it's in the package. So does that make sense for us to do that, or do we need to make both motions, another motion tonight, other than to bring it back to the next meeting for council review?
Mayor Hewitt, I think it's I think what feels right is to let the dust settle, because this is a monumental decision.
Yeah.
And allow the notice of disposition to be crafted and sent out. And as Councilor Leafwood pointed out, information or feedback we received from the public. So perhaps over the next 2 weeks, what council could do is provide staff with your uninhibited commentary on the draft terms and conditions. And then in a couple of weeks, maybe 2 or 3 weeks, staff will send an email out to council to confirm that we've received all of the commentary and feedback. We'll then contact the village's lawyer to go through the comments and suggestions to understand how it might fit into the process moving forward. And then staff will schedule a committee of the whole in which we can get back together and receive guidance from our lawyer, as well as allow council to discuss and debate the ideas that they provided the staff. Does that sound, or does that feel like it might work?
And I just wanted to say, regardless of how anyone voted, you're still give input on any of the items that come forward. And so, Councillor Leafwood?
Just for clarification's sake, what is the difference between a public hearing and an open house?
The public hearing is a very, and we're just listening. There's no exchange.
Yeah, I get that, but so then with an open house, we can then, that would be a better avenue for people to engage with council or someone else. Yeah. And are there restrictions around having an open house?
The mayor, to my knowledge, there's absolutely no reference to an open house in legislation. It's a practice that communities often use and have freedom, discretion for how they use it and how it runs and operates. The only things that are referenced in legislation would be things like a public hearing where there's legislative requirements.
And the last public meeting was not a village public meeting, it was the developers, so it didn't have to follow any of our rules. All right. And, we're on to our final item, which is the draft annual municipal report. And did you want to speak to that? It's just for other information at this point.
It might make sense, if you don't mind. Council's been provided with the information, and that within the next, or before the next council meeting, review the objectives and measures that are proposed for 2025 and 2026, because that's what we would, that's the key piece there where council kind of needs to be comfortable with it. It does identify the positions that would be responsible for these different measures. And it's worth noting that at the end of 2025, you no longer have a manager of strategic initiatives. So any work that's assigned to them at this point for 2026 might not happen unless council makes a decision, let's say at the fall, to create a position. The real intent of staff including this in this agenda was to make sure it's out in the public and there's ample time for them to comment on the annual report before we finalize it at the June 24th meeting. So what we can do is just leave it for now. July 10th, talk about it in a committee of the whole. July 24th, we'll get the final report for adoption.
I will ask one question though. There's space in here for photos. Are you wanting us to get photos, or are we going to arrange for those to happen for individual photos, or is it?
Staff had envisioned reusing the wonderful photos when you were in your youth. The previous or previous annual report.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I've been looking at the group picture, the whole, right? Because it's on the website. So much.
They're fantastic photos, so staff envisioned reusing them.
Okay. All right. So then we're done with the meeting. So the recommendation is that the committee of the whole now rise and report, and that will be the motion that was brought forward from our committee of the whole meeting. And the late item was the additional correspondence, so there is nothing to do with that. And then I'll take a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Brown. All those in favor? It's carried.